We will now move on to the section in which university students will interview Mr. Vogeler. Before I call them onto the stage, I'd like to say a few words about Mr. Carlos Vogeler, who is, you'll know now, who is currently the Executive Director for Member Relations at the World Tourism Organization. Based headquarters in Madrid, Spain, he is responsible for the coordination and supervision of regional programs and the affiliate members program, ensuring coordinated approach of the organization in members' relations and services. Since January 2009, he has held as well the position of Regional Director for the Americas at UNWTO. He is a tenured professor at University Rey Juan Carlos, Madrid, at the Department of Business Economics, and is the author of various university textbooks and articles on international tourism business and structure. Mr. Vogeler has held many management positions in the private tourism sector, including Pullman Tour, one of the largest Spanish tour operators, as Deputy Managing Director, and in Resort Condominiums International, part of Wyndham Worldwide Group, one of the world's largest hospitality groups, where he was Vice President for the Western Europe and the Vice President of Global Accounts Strategy and Industry Relations. He was member of the Board of Affiliate Members of the World Tourism Organization since 1993 and has served as chairman from 2005 to 2008. He is also a founding member of the Spanish Association of Experts in Tourism, AECIT. Mr. Vogeler carried out his studies in Canada and Spain, where he graduated in Tourism Business Administration at the Escuela Oficial de Turismo de Madrid, now University Rey Juan Carlos. He has a postgraduate studies in Business Administration by the ESE Business School of University of Navarra in Spain. I would like you please to join me on stage. And I would also like now to call out our students. I will start with Ms. Bianca Wu from Glion Institute Higher Education. Ms. Henriette Klavenes from the Universidad Rey Juan Carlos in Spain. Ms. Marika Endo from the University of Wakayama in Japan. And last but not least, Mr. Arnold Amrhein Madrigal from Roches, Marbella. Mr. Vogeler, the floor is all yours.
I thought the floor was theirs.
True.
I think this is an exercise whereby students are going to ask a number of questions, so I will not delay anymore the opportunity, and we are just going to have some sort of conversational dialogue on some of the topics that you might want to raise. So, shoot.
Absolutely. Okay, we're live. First of all, since I'm the first one to speak, I would like to thank you and, of course, the organization you represent, the World Tourism Organization, on behalf of my peers and, of course, the voice of a generation that is as much concerned with the future of talent as our generation and yours formerly. Now, I would like to begin with a question that perhaps starts from a space of a movement. And it's a movement that's been occurring for every generation, and it's a movement that has significantly started over the last few years. And it's basically what I call a generational displacement. And it's our generation, a young generation, the millennials, whatever name you would like to coin, and how year after year, as we progress in the next decades or few decades, will continue to replace the older generations that currently inhabit the workforce. Now, my question arises as a concern of the big movements that are occurring in this space, and how, even though eventually the majority of the composition of this workforce will be us, the younger generations, it is still fundamentally run on an operationally, on a value-based level, at the very foundation, at the very bedrock of how these workforce is managed by older generations with a different framework, perhaps, a different set of values. And so my question is, do you believe that there is perhaps a dialysis in perception between older generations that lay at the foundation of this workforce and us, the new generations, coming to inhabit this workforce? And what strategies, tactics are being implemented today or will continue to be implemented to remove these barriers of perception amongst the duality of these generations?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, because I think you're raising a very interesting topic, which has always been somehow present, is what we could define as the generation clash. I mean, we used to be young at a given time, and we started our career also debating very much on the same type of dilemma. How do we persuade these older generations that we have something to bring to the equation? And I think you are very fortunate in this particular generation, because you have probably received a much better training than the one that older generations have received. That's the positive, and that's the asset you have. The negative is that precisely because of that, older generations are going to see you as a threat. They're going to say, wow, these guys come very well prepared. Therefore, I have to defend myself against that. I think the best way to build that is through respect. Mutual respect. Older generations have something to bring. They probably think that they can bring more than what they truly can bring, because some of them might be outdated. Others are not necessarily outdated because they realize that they have to keep on learning on a permanent basis. Unfortunately, those will be more open to embrace the talent that you are going to bring to the equation. So I think it's trying to find the right balance through respect. We've somehow always gone through that type of clash. We come from a generation that has gone through many changes. Probably, I would say, the generation that has experienced more changes in a shorter period of time. And I think we have to be grateful for that. We have lived a tremendous experience immediately after, if you look at it, after the Second World War. We went into what we called the Cold War, and tourism started to develop, if we want to bring the tourism experience into that. And then we have seen how new countries have emerged after that, some of them in a bloody way, others specifically. We just heard Professor Unovic speaking about Yugoslavia in the late 80s, and he was promoting Yugoslavia in the US in the late 80s, to find out that a few years after that, there was no more Yugoslavia. But there was still a territory to be promoted. So I think older generations have gone through that experience to accept change. And that should make them more open to change and to accepting the fact your generation is much better prepared than our generation. You people have been blessed with much more technology, with better tools to get better education. And you just need to prove it in a respectful way. And then the transition will come on a gradual basis, not in a confrontational basis, but rather in a collaborative basis, accepting that older generations have also something to bring to the equation. We talk about experience. Well, experience is not everything, but it's part of it. So we need to combine experience with innovation, with talent, with passion. And this, which we don't use enough, the term passion, is something that I would ask you, that I will beg you to keep all the time. Passion in what you do, because that is going to be a fundamental driver, and you will gain the respect of older generations when you show your passion for what you do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the respect. It's very resounding, I think, for the audience and for ourselves as a generation. So now I'll allow her to.
Okay. So I have two different questions about Global Code of Ethics. And first one is the Global Code of Ethics of Tourism is going to be a convention soon. And I want you to think that it will have an influence for a member of UNWTO. And if so, what kind of commitment does the member have? And the second one is it's also about Global Code of Ethics, but a group of us in Wakayama University are working on a project of simplifying the Global Code of Ethics to promote to young people. This topic's actually, it's in the idea competition on day 3, but we want us, especially young people, to consider long-term sustainability. And I would like you to have a comment of this project.
Thank you so much, Marika, because I think your question on the Global Code of Ethics is very, very important, because we tend to forget that whatever we do has to be presided by ethics. And it is true that we live in a world that sometimes, perhaps too many times, too frequently, neglects ethics and puts other priorities on top of it. And that's not a good sign. As I think everybody knows, or many people know, the Global Code of Ethics was approved in our General Assembly in Santiago de Chile back in 1999. Very importantly, it was endorsed by the General Assembly of the UN 2 years after, in 2001. And it has served a purpose, but it's probably not enough. It served the purpose of being a voluntary adherence document whereby gender equality, whereby poverty reduction, whereby nature and cultural resources had to be protected, and it covered up to 9 different articles, which I think gave us the right frame to operate. But of course, its influence was limited by the fact that it was a document of voluntary adherence. Therefore, it was not a binding document. That's why, basically, since then, we started working in making that a convention. That is, an international treaty that will become a binding document, will become a law in all those countries that will ratify it. It's funny when we think about the fact that tourism is the 3rd productive sector in the world, and tourism has no international convention. If you look at many other sectors, and if you look at UNESCO, for instance, being very important, they have more than 100 international treaties or conventions. Tourism doesn't even have one. So we made it our goal, our objective, to have an international convention on tourism ethics. And the easiest thing to do was to take the Global Code of Ethics that already existed, that many private companies and of course governments were adhering to, and make it an international convention. And not changing much of it, because as you all know, making an international convention is not easy business. I mean, the wording of it is complex. Many countries will not be happy with this particular word or the other. But in essence, the concept of the Global Code of Ethics was accepted. So what happened in our General Assembly held recently in China is that there was an extensive debate subsequent to working groups that have been fine-tuning the text of the convention, taking it from the Global Code of Ethics, and we managed to have the convention approved in English language. But as our organization works with now 6 official languages, we just included Chinese, in order to be adopted, it has to be adopted in the 6 languages. And you all know that sometimes it changes when you move to one language, from one language to another. And I mean, you would be surprised of the endless discussions that we had just for the interpretation of one single word that was translated from English into Spanish or French or Arabic or Russian or Chinese, which are the official languages. So we did not manage to conclude the adoption of the convention in the 6 official languages. We just managed to have it approved, not adopted, in one language, which is English. So we still have some work to do. From now onwards, our objective is to call what we call a plenipotentiary meeting, which is like a sort of extraordinary General Assembly that will be called sometime in Madrid, our headquarters, probably in June next year, coinciding, or May, coinciding with our Executive Council, so that all countries that will send their plenipotentiary representatives could vote on the text of the 6 languages. And only then the convention will be adopted. And once it is adopted, countries will have to ratify through their parliamentary processes or through whatever constitutional process each country is giving itself. So as you see, it's a complex exercise. But we believe that we are on the right track, because the points that the convention covers, which are the points of the Global Code of Ethics, is the right thing to do. We cannot continue to grow if we don't have a fundamental code of sustainability, of ethics, if we give ourselves the proper way in which we want that growth to happen. And I'm very happy, for instance, to see that there is no gender equality amongst the students. I don't really believe that much in gender equality, I'm sorry. I believe in talent, regardless of the gender. And when we say, well, we have to be, here we should have 2 males and 2 females, why? I mean, no need. We have 3 intelligent and bright females and 1 intelligent and bright male. Does that mean that that is the right proportion across the world? Not necessarily, but you have been selected to be here because you are bright students, regardless of the gender. And I think this is one of the things that we need to learn when we work in the future in the tourism field. Unfortunately, the tourism field is a field that is offering good opportunities, both for women and for youth, which are in need of being offered those opportunities. And this is what the future Convention of Ethics is going to ensure in all the countries that finally decide to ratify it.
Great. Thank you. So, my question was in particular to the women and the youth you speak of, because I know goal number 8.
We opened the gate to that.
Goal number 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals is really to create these inclusive and sustainable economic growth areas. I was wondering if you could please share some examples of a policy that promotes the sustainable tourism for hiring in marginalized communities.
Yeah, I think that promoting sustainable tourism in what we could call marginalized communities has a lot to do with engaging the community in the benefits of what tourism is generating. Mm-hmm. When we consume local products, when we employ local people, when we ensure that the benefits generated by tourism remain in the community, those communities will no longer be marginalized. And the beauty of tourism is that it offers opportunities to tiny little entrepreneurship. And I think that is something that we need to encourage and we need to nurture. As you know, basically more than 90% of enterprises or initiatives in the tourism field worldwide are in the hands of micro, small entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is what really brings the opportunities that tourism is offering to these local communities to somehow get away from the poverty circle. And in order to avoid the clash that sometimes happens between the visiting community and the visitors, or I'm sorry, the residents and the visitors, we need to ensure that the residents are no longer marginalized. Mm-hmm. We need to ensure that the residents feel and get the benefits that tourism brings with it. So in anything that we could do in order to ensure that those local communities view a tourist as someone that is contributing to make their life better, someone that is bringing wealth, that is forcing them also to become better people to host them, and that we build up the interaction of the many things that we were discussing about the beauty of tourism, making us better people at the end of the day, accepting our differences, respecting our differences, so that we will no longer talk about marginalized communities, but communities which are inclusive, which are participative in the wealth that tourism generates.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the talent development, because one of the problems regarding this is the lack of communication between the private and the public sector. So I was wondering what measures the UNWTO, I know, yeah.
Yeah, more or less.
It's pretty hard, huh?
Well, it's very hard. UNWTO?
Yeah,
it is.
It's a mouthful.
Tough.
It's tough. All
Yeah,
right,
we
so
can't
what
pronounce
measures-
it like UNESCO. We say UNWTO, UNWTO. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
tough.
it doesn't have the same cling, you know. All right, so
There you have an opportunity for branding.
yes, I do.
Bring the
actually.
talent to the branding.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so my question is what measures they could take to make this communication more efficient and better?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think the private-public partnership is one of the challenges that we've been facing for decades in the travel sector. I think UNWTO, United Nations World Tourism Organization, is trying to do its best to bridge this relationship between public, private, and moreover, an academia. So I will bring it in the three dimensions. We need to put together the public sector, which is the policy maker. We need to bring together the private sector, which is somehow the engine of the tourism industry. I mean, they are the ones that are really producing. And public sector is there to organize things, to put a frame, to provide the support and the policies. And then, of course, the third dimension is the academia, because the academia is building the talent that you are demonstrating that you have. So UNWTO is working through its affiliate members in order to ensure that that works in a cohesive way. We are actually the only United Nations specialized agency that has the private or the non-government sector within its troops as an affiliate member. And why is that? That happened from the very beginning, since 1970, when UNWTO was established, as Professor Ergovic was mentioning, coming from UNWTO, which was the Union of Official Boards of Tourism. And already then, in 1970, the affiliate membership concept was built in so that the non-government sector would have a place in the organization and could interact with the organization. And as a result of that, we have been building prototypes with the private sector that Yolanda has been working very efficiently with. We are building the knowledge network that ENGIE has also been working in, so that we bring in universities and research institutions so that they can all share how do we move forward. These prototypes, for instance, we've worked on the seasonality prototype. I had the opportunity of being in a beautiful place 2 weeks ago in Uruguay, Punta del Este. Punta del Este is a summer resort. 60% of visitors to Punta del Este are from Argentina. And it was highly seasonal. And I can already use the verb in its past. It was. Because since we started to work on a prototype called 365, meaning we need tourists the 365 days of the year, they have improved enormously their seasonality. Of course, they have done the right things, building a convention center so that they could attract the MICE business as well, putting together cultural activities and festivals, and things that will not so much depend on a beach resort, on a summer resort, will not so much depend on weather. And that happened because we were able to put together the public sector with the private sector working in the same direction. And again, I think that that combination works when the academia also comes in the picture. And then we have the three dimensions of it. The prototype of wines that we call Joyful Journey. We put together different winemakers with the public sector, and they start working on how they can better position wine as an attraction for tourists, as much as gastronomy. Those are the type of things that could work out on a true, meaningful, private-public partnership that provides good results.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think I think we've covered a good breadth of sort of questions in regards to the legality, for example, the ethics on development. Now, I see we still have a few minutes, and perhaps to bring it all in closing, there is a fundamental crisis, I believe, and this conference is on talent, of course. And it's regarding the retention. We see year over year turnover rates within the industry increasing. We see the numbers that reveal that specifically hotel school students have incredibly low retentions within the industry in the starting years after graduation. So it's good that you tackled on that last answer the role of academia. So perhaps my question is, how do you see these two domains, both academia and the organizations that inhabit it, and both the industry and the organizations that inhabit it? And what is your view on how successful, how efficient, or how inefficient are they preparing and retaining talent? And do you think there is a need to reshape them to better suit the novel needs of the workplace?
I would say there is room for improvement. I think that traditionally academia and businesses have been facing each other and somehow not trusting each other. Even to the extent not respecting each other sufficiently. Businesses, in many cases, consider academia too theoretical. And they say, well, and I can say that because I've always tried in my career to keep my activity in both worlds, because I was one of them. I was one that was criticizing academia when I was in the business in my early days. I was saying, well, you know, academia, they're just in their own bubble. They are theorists. They don't bring any practicality, application to the business. They don't know the business. They don't know that every day we are desperate. We need to pay the salaries at the end of the month. We need to survive. And they are there with their research and their empirical approaches. No, I need something tangible. I need something that I can apply. And they're not giving it to me. So when I had the opportunity of, and I remember I was called by the university at that time, and because I was critical, they said, okay, why don't you come here? What would you do if you were in our place? You're always criticizing. Come on, we give you the opportunity of doing it. So I said, well, okay, why not? And we were preparing some postgraduate courses at that time, and I got engaged. And since then, I discovered the vocation. I said, well, I want to be part of this education side. I don't want to criticize it anymore. I want to be part of it and see what I can bring to it. So I think that we need to build the bridge between academia and businesses, and we need to show them how to respect each other. And I think we've made a lot of progress. Why? Because businesses are becoming much more scientific, I must say. And they are now accepting that we need to give a scientific approach to our strategies, to our tactics, to our vision, to our future development plans in business. And on the other hand, academia is also accepting the fact that they need to be more down to earth, that they need to develop research, which is not sitting on the shelves, but could be applicable. And they have decided to bring more professors into academia, which are on a daily business life as well, so they can bring cases, and we've developed case studies. And so I think that we are getting closer and closer, but there is still a gap. So I think there is room for improvement. But again, the word I will use is mutual respect. And the business has to respect the academia for what it brings. And the academia has to respect the business, and they need to complement each other.
Perfect. Yeah, so essentially symbiosis between the academia and the industry. Excellent.
I would like to shoot in another question. Yeah, I just forgot my question. Yes, so big companies, they use money to persuade workers to stay working with them. But let's face it, the tourist industry isn't exactly Silicon Valley. So I was wondering, what kind of motivation would you give these workers to stay in the tourist industry and actually also attract young talent to get into the industry?
Thank you. Henriette.
Yes,
That's a beautiful question. I love it.
thank you.
Because I think that we are sometimes too much driven by money. And money is a factor. And you're right. I mean, tourism, in general terms, cannot compete with Silicon Valley companies in terms of paying talent. So you have to find other ways. You cannot go like this gentleman, I forgot his name, who is the president of the US. When he traveled to Puerto Rico the other day, he was saying, you cost us a lot of money. I mean, money is, yes, it's an important factor in today's life, but it should not be, and this is very idealistic perhaps, should not be the fundamental factor. So you need to find other things. And I think that tourism business in general realizes that. So they have to build the right atmosphere for their people so that they find rewards that go beyond money. Yes, you're going to earn less here, but you're going to be happy. You're going to do something that you are going to feel the reward for what you are doing. You're going to contribute to make people's life better. You're going to be in a working atmosphere that you're going to be proud of. Those are the values that we need to bring. I understand that this is easy said and probably not so easy done. But I think there are still many people that fortunately consider that money should not be the only and main driver, that it is important, but that there are other drivers that in many cases they will bring forward and not just money. And I think the more that we do that exercise, honestly, I think the better people that we become.
Thank you.
So you spoke a lot, sorry, last question here. You spoke a lot about passion and having mutual respect. What other words of advice would you give budding graduates like us?
I think to be wise, to be reasonable, to be moderate, to be respectful, well, I already say that with others, but to accept all these differences and see in those differences the values. You are going to be facing, your generation is going to be facing fascinating times. I mean, the way in which you are going to do business 5 years from now, it's unknown. But the beauty of it is that you need to be prepared for change. I must confess, our generations had difficulties accepting change. And the clash has come in many cases because of that. Fortunately, you are already engaged in permanent change. You guys have been able to move forward with social media in a way which is amazing. So you are prepared to work with whatever technology is going to come 5 years from now, which, by the way, has not been invented yet. But you are not going to be against it. You are going to embrace it because you're already prepared for that. So I think flexibility is another word that I would like to ask. Adaptation is another word that I would like to add. And of course, all the others that I have said. But I think you have the ingredients for that, if I may use the term, because you are already prepared to embrace change. But believe me, the changes that are going to come, and that will cover also the first question, older generations are not ready to grab. They're not ready. They're too tired. They have gone through too many changes. But you guys are not. You guys are eager to get this new technology and apply it and find new things and be innovative and be creative. And that's going to be your strength.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we done? Thank you.
Although
Brilliant questions. Huh?
technology was actually telling us about the time, I think.
But that's cheap technology. That
Yeah.
I could do with this.
Better than that one. If you'd like to ask one more question, I think we could give some time for
Can
that.
I ask one?
Of course, please.
How do you see yourselves 10 years from now? Henriette, you go first.
That's a pretty big question.
I know. It's my revenge.
Yeah. All right. I would like to be in a place where I'm happy, where I could use my abilities, my personal abilities, and not always do the same every day.
Okay. So you like to change.
I guess I'm eager to change.
Good. So you have the ingredients that are needed.
I guess so, yeah.
Okay. Bianca.
Yes, 10 years from now, I would like to be in a job, ideally, where I am able to have a flexible work schedule. Because I think right now, our generation particularly, not only are we adventurous, we're eager, we also really we need to balance other things than just work. So for me, family is very important. In 10 years, I hope to have kids and to have a job that will allow me to do both successfully.
Very good,
Yeah.
because life is everything. It's both things. Perfect.
Yeah.
Marika?
10 years. It's kind of the same answers as Bianca, but I already got a job starting next year. I'm going to do sales. I'm sales engineer from starting next year, but I stood from 10 years. I want to be doing successful on job, and I do want to have a family too. Yeah, I will do my best.
Excellent. Arnold?
Well, with all the respect, Mr. Vogeler, that you deserve, the question of 10 years always makes me smile because looking at the landscape that we have in front of us, it sort of becomes quite futile to see it because change is so neighbor to us that it's difficult to find a shooting star in a direction and aim towards that. However, for me, I think success, whether it is in 10 years or a position I would like to be in 10 years, or quite frankly, a position I would like to be tomorrow, is finding intersections amongst the compendium of interests that we all have. I think as a generation, we are bombarded by a landscape of ideas, of innovation, and quite frankly, I face the challenge of finding all my interests and finding how I can produce work, how I can produce output that combines all the interests that I have, that finds the interests in the intersections in those interests, and has a global impact in the world. And that I can put my creative output as a human being and have a resonance to that. So that is my answer.
Well, you were asking yourselves, what is talent? There you have the answer. This is what talent looks like. All this for young people. So thank you.
Thank you very much.